Hey everybody, welcome. We are going to be practicing some mobilization of the hips, waking up the hip area. This can be a great practice just on its own, or you can practice this before you do a hip flow or something else that you're going to be practicing today. So we're going to meet on the mat, on our backs, soles of the feet together, and we will maybe want some cushions if you do need some support, but if not, we're just going to go for it without any props at all. See you there. So we're going to start today's session, soles of the feet together, knees open. Now, depending on how close you want the feet towards the groin will depend on how much sensation you're going to feel in the hip area. So if you're really struggling today with a lot of tension in the hips, just shift the feet a little further away. If you want lots of sensation in the hips, I can't say sensation today apparently, sensation in the hips, put my teeth back in, then you can pull the feet a little bit closer. Now what's really nice about this position is we're going to get a little bit of an arching in the back, so just be mindful of that. We're opening up into the hips and also the hip flexors, we're releasing the psoas muscle a little bit, and we're straight away getting quite a lot of sensation. Now if you find the sensation just too intense, you can either pop your hands, make little fists and place them underneath the thighs. If that's still not enough, you can take yoga blocks or yoga cushions, because there are specific cushions for yoga, or cushions, underneath your hips, again to support this sensational opening of the hips. Arms can go anywhere they want to go, and we're just going to begin the session by breathing nice and steadily into the belly, waking up this abdominal region, which is also going to be important for the hip area. Now, when we think about how the pelvis, the hips, all this area is related, the back, the glutes, let's be aware that actually everything is interwoven. So if we're struggling with hip pain and our pelvis pain and all kinds of things going on, just be mindful. We don't want to overstretch the hips and agitate the lower back, especially if you're working with SI joint problems or anything that's going on in this kind of part of the lower back. Just be aware of how deeply you're opening up into your hips today. Again, if you're working with any knee issues as well, be very sensitive to the amount that the hips are opening versus the amount that the knees are actually mobilizing. Final couple of breaths here. Now you can guide the knees closed with the hands, nice and steady, bringing the soles of the feet back into the floor and let them go a little bit wider than the hips, maybe mat distance. Arms can come out nice and wide, and we're going to slowly drop one knee in, the other knee out, and slow this down, so take your time. Feel that internal rotation of the leg that's coming across and into the center. And then go to the other side. You might find that you have lots more external or internal rotation than external rotation. We're just seeing what we have available. And the hips might leave the floor, the back might leave the floor. What's happening with the shoulder, the head. Just getting a sense of how your whole body is moving as one. Where you might be feeling some sensation, where you might be feeling some tension, where it might feel really delicious in your body as you move. Good, a couple more. As we come back to the center nice and slowly, the knees can hug into more of a froggy position. And if you want to rock a little bit from side to side, you can. Or we can take it to a gentle happy baby. So we can grab the ankles or the shins. Feet don't have to flex, they can be kind of floppy. And we can just rock a little bit. I quite like making little circles. It feels quite nice on the sacrum. Just having a little explore of the hip area, the back. And just see what happens. Now the soles of the feet will come together and we're going to roll up into our butterfly shape, so Baddha Konasana. You don't have to turn, I'm just turning so you can see me a little bit better. Now from here, just kind of pulsing back and forward. So we're just moving from the hips as best we can. The spine's going to be involved here, so we're not going to be able to completely keep the spine from rounding, and that's absolutely fine. I'm just pulsing in and out, nice and gently. Couple more, just waking up the hip area. It's really important that we wake up the hips and don't just go straight in for flexibility, especially if it's cold outside, or just especially if you know this is an area where you feel quite stiff. We always also think that we need to be hypermobile in our hips. Really? Do we need to be hypermobile on our hips? That's a good question, isn't it? Not really, right? We just need to have good functional movement in the hips and strength. We want to have strength. In order to move properly, we need to feel strength in our hip area. Right, let's slide the legs forward and pulse in and out here. So we can pulse back and forward. Oh, that feels so nice on the hamstrings as well. So we're going to get a little bit hammies today too. Just to wake up again into hip flexor region as well. So think about the rec fem that comes across and into, above and over the hips. Really important for elevating our legs up. And then we're going to let the legs go wide. Doesn't have to be super wide, just wide enough that you're going to bounce in and out. You can keep the feet flexed, you can soften the feet. You can rock a bit on the pelvis here, so pelvis back and forward, get that movement going. Good, so you'll feel the core starting to activate as you tuck back, inner thighs, medial hamstring, all the yummy stuff. Now we're going to combine those three movements together. So we're going to bring the feet together, pulse forward. Feet away and long, pulse forward. Feet wide, pulse forward. Now you can either slide the feet across the floor, pulse, or you can lift and place. You'll know which one's harder because you'll feel it. And again, we're waking up into the hip flexors, waking up into our hips before we maybe go and sit all day, or before we go and drive, or before we flow. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I want to do a flow in a minute, Kate, and I want to get warm in my hips. Or not. It might be a way to cool down as well. So it's a great way if you've been maybe doing a lot of activities. It's actually quite nice to keep a little bit of energy going and then cool the body down. Good, a couple more. Last one wide. And then bring the soles of the feet together. You might want to take hold of the ankles or shins and then little butterfly knees. Just gently winging open and close the knees. You may feel this coming into the psoas muscles. If you can't, don't panic. It's not that they're not there, you just might not feel it. So it depends how sensitive you are to your body, and it also just depends how we're made, how we're built, what's moving, and what we can feel. And just noticing the sensations. Again, waking up the hips. What's really nice as well is that we don't always have to go to our full flexibility when we're bouncing or going quite quickly. We can go somewhere in and out. It doesn't have to be held. It can just be explored and experienced in a very short, fast way. And it's beneficial as well as obviously nice long holds. So bring the hands behind us. Let's pause the bounce. It's hard to automatically pause the bounce. Come on, legs, stop bouncing. Feet are going to go back wide again. We're going to do a little bit of functional movement. Now, we can take this in stages. So stage one, rocking knee down, just as we did on our backs. This time trying to get that full knee down to the floor if you can, and slightly pulling the hip back. So we really feel that lovely stretch. Oh, I love that internal rotation. I don't know why, it just feels so good. So good. Now you can stay with this the entire time. You can go slowly and just really feel into it. You can speed it up and make it a little bit faster. Now if you want to go for a little bit more, when we roll to one side, push and lean slightly forward. So you get a little bit more of a stretch. It's more like a mermaid position. Lean back and go to the other side and push forward. Oh, stiff. Roll and push. Roll and push. Now, if you want a bit more, if you're feeling a little bit more energy, we'll lift up onto that knee that's in the front and then step a leg forward and lunge in. We then come back, drop the bum down, roll back, swap sides, push into the hands behind us, step the foot forward and lunge. Coming back. Now you can slow this down. It's great for the cerebellum, so the brain's going, say what? What is she trying to make me do? Really good to get the brain active. Now think of this as being training for the rest of your life to be able to get up and down off the floor. We'd love to be able to do that the whole way through our lives, right? Really important that we can actually get up and down off the ground. Now if you want to go a little further, we can push into that front leg and lift the back leg up, come back down, roll back over and keep going. You can tell by my voice, it's getting a little bit tiring, so it's a great little warm up, great little cardio movement. Good, without really having to try. Where you're like, no, yeah, I'm definitely trying. You can stay at the variation 1, remember. You can come in between them if you get a bit tired. You can speed this up, go a little bit quicker, or slow it down. Remember, your hands are really useful tools, so use them. They're great for getting us up and down off the floor and for balance. We'll do one more each side. If you're doing the full variation, up and down. Last one. Good, coming back, all the way back. If we're still at variation 1, we come back here, we join in. And we're going to bring the soles of the feet together, take a moment to pause. Whew, great work. Now coming onto the hands and knees. Let's just give the tail a little bit of a wag. Side to side, move the hips. So we often do cat-cows. Here I want you to explore side to side movements. Glutes are waking up a little bit. Maybe circling round and about, the pelvis is now being explored. Good. You're going to extend one leg back. It doesn't matter which leg you're going to start with. And we're just going to lift and pull it in. Extend and pull it in. We're just playing with, again, movement here. In and out. In and out. Just seeing what happens. Try not to let this happen in your spine. So we're trying to keep it very much into the hip. In and out. Now we're going to go out and behind. So go out and across behind. Again, this is not into the back. It's just into the hip. So the hip will tell you where it can stop. This is glute work happening. Side and diagonally across. Side, diagonally across. Side, diagonally across. Small movement. So that diagonal movement, you'll feel it in the glute medius as well. Couple more. Side. Now hold it to the side, we're just going to close and open. Close and open. Close and open. Again, just as much as the hip will go, just to feel into it. Glutes are going to play an important role for keeping stabilised in our hip joints. Good, then dropping the knee back down, extend the other leg back. Up and in, up and in. You can go quicker than this or slower. Again, try and keep the spine neutral, so we don't have to pin the belly in. The belly will engage quite automatically, but we're not hammocking into the back. We're not doing this cat-cow, it's just the leg moving as best as possible. And you'll feel the glute and the hamstrings wake up to lift that leg up and in. Couple more. Okay, now we're going to take that leg out to the side and diagonally across. Again, this is not happening in the spine, but in the hip. So you might find there's limited range of motion here, but it feels really good to get those glutes firing up. For some reason, this side for me today is tired. I was like, no, stop moving. Couple more. Good, let's hold that leg out to the side and we're going to close and open, just as much as the leg can. Try and find a little bit of imagined resistance as well. So imagining that we're pushing open something and squeezing something closed. Couple more. Last one. Good. Give the hips a bit of a circle and then tuck the toes. Come into a downward facing dog. You may want to wiggle around a little bit, move the hips. You may just want to play with a little bit of mobility here. And we're going to go through a short little flow and we'll end with a little stretch. Little and little. So we'll step the right foot to the outside of the right hand, left foot to the outside of the left hand, and come through your variation of a squat. This can be active, so nice and high. It can be a little bit more passive, so more of a malasana squat. Or it can be somewhere in between. Yeah? On our inhale, we'll lift up and turn the toes parallel, lift the arms up high and take a little back bend. As we exhale, hands to the heart center and come into a chair position. Feet might be a little bit wider and that's absolutely fine. Hands will come down to the earth. We'll step back into plank. Knees can be up or down. And then start to sink the hips down. And again, knees can stay down here, or squeeze the buttocks, keep the legs strong, push through the floor, keep your toes tucked for this variation of upward facing dog, and avoid throwing your head back, but squeeze the buttocks, opening up through the front of the hips. The knees are then going to open wide, untuck the toes, and shift the weight back into a wide knee child's pose position. We'll step forward with the right leg to the outside of the right hand, lizard lunge, sinking in. Then tucking the left toes, step back, downward facing dog. Big stretch. Left foot's going to step to the outside of the left hand. Right foot to the outside of the right hand, toes are turned out. We come into our variation of squat. Knees open. Use the glutes to open those hips. Inhale to lift up, turn the toes parallel. Little back bend. Exhale, hands to the heart center. We'll come through into that chair pose. Don't worry if the leg's a little bit wider than usual. Hands come down to the floor. We'll step back into plank or knees down. Lowering the hips, remember knees can stay down or up. Squeeze the buttocks. Variation of upward facing dog. Then let the knees go wide. Push back into child pose, wide kneed. We'll step forward with the left foot to the outside of the left hand, lizard lunge, sinking in here. And then push back into downward facing dog. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Right foot to the outside of the right hand, left foot to left hand, squat, Alasana. Inhale, feet turn forward parallel, arms up, little back bend. Exhale, hands to the heart center. Come into your chair. Hands down, plank pose. Take the upward facing dog variation and then widen the knees, wide knee child pose. Right foot into lizard lunge and then push back, downward facing dog. Left foot, right foot, squat. Coming all the way up, turn the feet parallel, little back bend. Hands to the heart center, chair pose. Hands down, plank pose. Upward facing dog. Wide knee child pose. Left foot comes into the lizard. And we push back into downward facing dog. Right foot, left foot, squat. Come all the way up, turn feet parallel, little back bend. And then come through your chair pose. Hands come down. Step back into plank. Upward facing dog. Knees go wide. Child pose. Stepping the right foot to the outside of the right hand, lizard lunge. Downward facing dog. Left foot, right foot, last round, Malasana. All the way up, take a little back bend, feet parallel. Come through our chair. Hands down, plank pose. Upward facing dog, squeeze the butt. Knees go wide. Child pose. We'll come through left leg lizard lunge. Downward facing dog. Stay in down dog for a moment. Take a breath in, inhale. Exhale. We're going to slowly draw the right knee to the right wrist and lengthen the left leg away, either into pigeon. Now pigeon might not feel accessible for your body, so you can drop into deer. So whichever variation feels nicer for your knees. And we'll just fold into this, feeling into the sensations into the hips. Now, if we're in pigeon pose, just check that the kneecap, the patella, is nicely flat onto the floor and you're feeling the stretch in that right glute sort of area into the hip. And we'll breathe nice and softly, just to calm down the breath, but still feel the body opening and expanding. Couple more breaths here. Pushing the weight back into downward facing dog. Then we'll step the left leg in. Pigeon. Which they weren't all animal names and I'd probably remember them. And then coming either into deer shape or pigeon pose. Now, if you're in deer, you come forward either over the knee or the shin. And if you're in pigeon pose, again, try and keep that kneecap down. It's okay if there's a little bit of a wobble in the hips, it's fine. But just listen to what feels comfortable enough to be here for a few breaths. And we're still getting a stretch, but it's not absolutely terrifyingly uncomfortable, right? Let it feel accessible. Couple more breaths. And then very gently, we'll swing the back leg forward. Let the feet go as wide as the mat and come back to lie on your spine. Knees can knock together. Hands again can go where they're comfortable. And we'll just take a moment here to pause. If this is the end of your practice today, if that's all you're doing, then you can stay here as long as you need. Staying here and just letting the heart rate come back to a normal pace. You can be here anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10 minutes if you need it. Your body will tell you when it's time to move. Failing that, we've got here a couple more breaths. And you can move on with the rest of your day. I'm going to leave you here. Decide what's coming next. Thank you so much for joining me and practicing with me today.